Have you ever wanted to play your home course on a golf simulator? Well, I've got a golf simulator in my garage and I'm doing just that. I'm having my home course designed and built into GSPro golf simulator software. I hired Pakman, who is one of the veteran GSPro course designers, to build it for me, and I'm going to be taking you along with us from the start to the finished product of this course design process. Pakman and I had a video call to kick off this project, but we mostly just talked about the overall GSPro course design process and how he handles this for his clients like myself. If you're interested in Pakman services, I will put his contact information down in the video description below, but let's get straight into this call. Thanks for doing this, Sonny. I really appreciate it. Really excited to have my course built. I've never played a course in GSPro in real life, so there's nothing really near me, and that's kind of why I wanted to try this out. So really looking forward to it. I guess if you could just kind of start off telling, like, how did you get involved doing this, designing courses in GSPro and actually making it your job?
Yeah, so this happened maybe a little over 2 years, 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe. Kind of all, melding in a little bit. But I think a little over 2 years ago is when I first came across GSPro. At the time, everyone was working from home, including myself, because of COVID. And it was a good opportunity. I felt like, hey, I can sharpen my golf game if I have a, sim setup at my house. I'm here all the time. So got into getting a launch monitor and started looking into simulation software, and I came across GSPro, and that was kind of the end of the story. Like you, really, I wanted to play the course that I play in real life, which is my home course. So that was my first build. And I had no desire to do it, as a living or anything like that. But I wanted to be able to play the course that I play in real life. Got into course design, had a lot of fun, started building a couple more. And I felt like it's something that I really enjoyed, and I started to wonder if there's something that I could do for a living, and it just went from there. And about not quite 2 years ago, I made it a full-time job, made a commitment.
Yeah.
Yep, and here we are.
Yeah, so you have clients like myself where we're gonna pay you to design a course of their choice, but you also have a Patreon where people can subscribe on a monthly basis. And I actually have seen you post a really good overview of how that works and everything in the GSPro Facebook group. Yeah. But for those that are confused by it or don't know, could you explain how that works?
Yeah, it can definitely be very confusing because for Joe average user, you have GSPro, you can download all these courses and you go into Facebook group or whatever, and they talk about Patreon. And you're like, what is that? And I'm hesitant to pay, $5, $10 a month extra, when I'm not sure what I'm getting. But Patreon itself is a platform for content creators of various types, podcasts, people who create artwork, whatever, to showcase their work and provide some additional value to people who subscribe, to their platform. So there are 4 designers currently who have Patreon pages, and each of us have exclusive content that's only available for people who subscribe to our Patreon. And that's myself, TechBud, Run, and the Golf Boy. Those are the 4 people who have Patreons. And there's some strict criteria. So GSPro doesn't allow anybody to have these private servers. Each of us have at least 25 courses for the general, in general on the GSPro server, which gave us, permission to have our own private servers. And on top of that, you have to make sure that you have actually more courses in GSPro's default server than on your private server. So for example, I have, I think 50 some odd courses in GSPro, and I have about, 40 some odd courses in Patreon. And I'll always be keeping that balance. And what it allows me in particular to do is it really augments my income, allows me to charge what I charge for the courses that I build, because I get additional value out of hosting that on the Patreon and attracting subscribers. So if I'm charging, $2,500 for a build, it's sort of in my equation that, $2,500 accounts for part of my time and effort, but also I know that I'm going to get some additional value out of the subscribers. So it's a really critical piece for those who are doing it for a living. In short, that's what it is. And there's a lot of great exclusive courses in there. For me, almost all courses go directly to Patreon first, and then on a first in, first out basis, they roll into the GSPro server. So they'll eventually get there, but right now there's about 7 or 8 month lag. So they tend to stay on Patreon for several months and then go to GSPro. As I build more courses, that time is gonna increase a little bit because I'm putting about half as many, about half the courses in GSPro and half in Patreon. So I was pretty worried, but that's kind of how it works. Oh, I should mention that me and I believe a couple of others, Run and the Golf Boy, have monthly drawings, or I think Run has a bi-monthly drawing, but have drawings or quarterly, courses that subscribers can choose. Other kind of benefits for different types of tiers. Well, for me, for my $10 a month tier, you get entered into a drawing. And I've given away 18 premium course builds each month for last year and a half. So that's a good perk as well.
Yeah. So winner of that drawing each month gets a course build of their choice, right? And
exactly.
Yeah.
At premium level.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the attraction as well. Hopefully that's part of the attraction.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you exactly, like, how do you decide what goes on Patreon and what goes straight to GSPro, or not straight to, but like, how does that work? So that makes perfect sense. It kind of goes there for 7, 8, 9 months and then rotates into the game. So
that's right. I mean, I do have some courses that went directly into GSPro, like the ones that I might do a general fundraiser, or like 100 people contribute, out of general Facebook group or whatever. Then those go directly into GSPro because, it's their course. They're the ones who paid and commissioned it. So those type of situations, they go directly to GSPro. Or any passion build that I do, like Muirfield Village or famous PGA venue that I want to build, they may go directly into GSPro first.
And so, just technically wise, I'm subscribed to your Patreon, and for those that haven't done it, you subscribe. Then there's a link in there to your course server that you can pretty much just copy and paste into GSPro in the settings. And then you'll have additional courses to choose from and download from Pakman or from whoever you're subscribing to. So it's pretty simple.
Exactly. Just one-time step and courses just show up.
So wanted to ask you, like, what is the start to finish process of a course design? I know there's like multiple different programs that you use for different steps. And then also you've got to find LiDAR data to be able to start from. And like, could you just kind of walk us through how that goes start to finish?
Sure. Most important thing is the raw materials. And that's, like you mentioned, is LiDAR, which is digital height information. Typically, governments use drones to fire pulses of laser on the ground, and they can measure what the ground elevation looks like at a pretty good resolution. So that digital elevation information is a must-have. Otherwise, you're trying to kind of by hand carve a terrain by what memory. So you absolutely have to have the LiDAR for you to have an accurately plane course that's going to have the right slopes and right elevation changes. And the second piece of the raw material that you need is good satellite overhead. Similarly, Google and Bing and other places, they have satellites around the world. They constantly update the Earth image. So there's really well detailed satellite images available from Bing and Google, but it's a hit and a miss because the satellite may have passed during winter or late fall. So then everything is kind of gray or hard to tell apart. So good raw material is important, and satellite is important for the reason of the next step. So the first step is really to make sure that you have the LiDAR and the satellite cut in the exact dimension, exactly the same and aligned. Once you have that, the next step is called splining, and that's really a term for tracing out the various surfaces of your course. So you're using the various satellite overheads, as well as the indentations that you can see on the LiDAR to trace out bunkers, tee boxes, fairways, any surface that are kind of different from each other. So then you end up with this kind of blueprint, traced out map of your course based on the satellite image that you used. And once you have that, you need to turn that into kind of a 3D model. Right now, it's just a flat drawing with an overhead, traced in. So the next step in the process is something we use a tool called Blender. That's a 3D modeling tool. And these splines that you traced is married with the LiDAR, which has the elevation information. And now using Blender, now the 3D shape of the entire course is created with different surfaces as different objects in this 3D model. So now you have a 3D model of the course with various surfaces identified. And that basically looks like your course, although pretty funky in the 3D modeling tool. So now you've gotten pretty far. This is probably about a third of the way through the entire build process. Once you have that, you bring that into something called Unity, which is a 3D rendering platform and a game platform. That's the platform where GSPro is run. It provides things like physics. So when you hit something, how something bounces, how the 3D space is rendered. So it's basically a gaming engine that GSPro uses. It's called Unity. We bring the 3D models that we created in Blender into Unity. That's where all the aesthetic work happens in terms of change the surfaces to look like, real greens, real bunkers. In the case of premium builds where I use the, satellite image as a basis of the texture for different surfaces, then Photoshop work is involved to edit out all the trees and shadows and houses and drunks and golf carts and what have you out of the overhead. So you have a clean satellite image without trees and shadows. That is made with the 3D models that you brought in Unity. Now you have kind of a photorealistic kind of looking surface of your course. This is then where you add things like trees, houses, and structures and other details that you see. So now you have the surface. Now it's time to add all the things on top of the ground to make it, look like your golf course. And that's a pretty involved process because you have to identify from satellite image and maybe from the shadow length on the overhead to decide what type of trees that you might be using on that spot. So you're making those kind of vegetation decisions. You're putting tall, deep rub grasses based on what it looks like on the photos and video references that you might have. So this is the part where really any videos, drone footages, any photos that you yourself might have comes into place. Yeah, and then obviously throughout all of this, there's feedback with the client if I'm doing a client build in terms of, hey, does this look okay? So there's some checkpoints throughout the process. I probably forgot to mention that I used Inkscape and Blender and Unity to build the course. But what really glues all of that together is this GSPro specific course building tool set from a group called OPCD. It's basically these three guys who are the mastermind behind providing all these design tools. So those tools enable us to use Unity and Blender and Inkscape to build these courses. So we're not doing everything from scratch. There are a lot of tools and toolboxes that the OPCD group has provided. They're independent from GSPro. One thing that GSPro does try to do is to make sure that there's a separation from their software to course building. So GSPro itself doesn't build any courses. Even the course building tools is provided a separate entity called OPCD. So that's how it's kind of set up. And in terms of, like, for instance, granting a license for me to monetize to have clients or to have a private server on Patreon, those terms of licenses are granted by OPCD to use those tools for the purpose of monetization. So not anybody can just willy-nilly go charge for courses. You need permission from them.
Right. But anybody can design a course for personal use or non-commercial use.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's why we have like 800 courses.
But the entire process you just described sounds like it would take forever, especially the first time, which is why I'm paying you. Because
you need persistence and time, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the timeline for a typical like premium course build for yourself? Like,
Myself, I think it's like start to finish. We're looking at a week or two, but that includes review time because
yeah.
clients take the build, and then they take a few days to take a look at it and get back to me. If there was probably no review time, it's a little bit less than a week probably, but it's my full-time job, so we're talking about
Yeah.
somewhere between 42, I would say 80 hours or something like that.
Yeah. And so from the client perspective, they hire you. What does it look like on their side from, you start off and then you mentioned like you send them kind of the first hole or two, what are those review steps along
Sure.
the way? Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. It might be useful to start from like the coding process, maybe. I think you already kind of went through, but when client reaches out to me and express interest, I sort of provide sort of general, hey, these are the three different types of base levels that I provide, and these are the price ranges. And so just kind of quickly recap, that part of it. There's a light build and a silver build and a gold build, and you can think of it as a sort of basic, mid-level, and highly detailed level courses. The key difference for the gold build is fully detailed. What I shoot for is sort of, as much realism as possible. And that's achieved through use of satellite image as, basis of the surface textures, like I mentioned before. And for light build, you're not going to have structures and roads, and trees will be in place. But it's a great option for practice. You want to beat your buddies at your home course, and practice is your only purpose. Then light will just be fine. It'll play true. So once that coding process is once I sort of provide an information and client says, okay, go ahead, that's within my sort of price range, and I think I'm thinking about silver build, then I go back and I procure those raw materials that I talked about, LiDAR and the satellite overhead, and I download it and take a look at a closer look. Things that I look for are what are the things that are going to add difficulty to making this course, look great. And it can be things like hundreds of bunkers or thousands of houses or lots of creeks that flow through the course, or incredible mountain backdrop that are far away that should be captured to give you the look. So it could be anything, but I have to take a look at those kind of things and the detail level that client asks for. And I provide some detail on, hey, this is a pricing that I can offer you, and here are the reasons why, because so many houses, because of their, million bunkers, whatever the case may be. So that's the quoting process. Client decides to go ahead. Half deposit is required to secure a spot in the queue. It's a first in, first out queue. Right now, I'm booked for a couple of months. It's winter, so it's a kind of coming to the end of the busy season, but I had a backlog during the winter. Summer times it'll be a little bit slow, and the backlog might be a little bit shorter. So you wait a couple months like you did, and then we get to the process of the initial build, and that's where I take the LiDAR, do the splining, and I do the step that I didn't mention before, but you have to actually go into a separate tool and define the T positions and the pins. So I do that piece of it, and I provide an initial build to check out general terrain shape. At this point, all the terrain carving or the fine tuning around the bunkers, all the water body and lakes should have been carved, and the water's in place and things like that. Just won't have any trees or any vegetation, but the color should be what I want to use. It may have some peripheral trees, so you can kind of look at the color scheme. But the initial build is really to say, hey, you missed a tee box here, or that bunker no longer exists today. Anything like that. Those type of things are much easier to fix earlier in the process than later. So that's kind of the initial process. And, the other purpose is to just show the client that I'm making some progress after, waiting for 2 months. So once I get an okay on that build saying that, hey, all the tee boxes look great, the distances look right, or make these kind of color tweaks. Can it be greener? We're building a Texas course for you. Do you want it kind of browned out summer look, or are you looking for best, the luscious, April Texas conditions or whatever it may be. So we'll make those kind of tweaks. And once that build is done, really the next build is first couple of holes done to completion. So it'll have all the structures, all the satellite shading, and the texture work will be done. Trees and everything will be in place. And that's yet another chance for the client, for you to say, oh, let's make these adjustments. This is not exactly, the kind of tree, it should be a pine tree, but you have a bunch of oaks there, whatever the case may be. We try to come to agreement and sign off on the first 2 holes. And once that happens, next one is full build and the final review. But because we had those 2 reviews prior about the tree choices and colors and terrain and all that, when we get to the end, hopefully there are no big surprises, and we're talking about, that tree needs to be taller. I can never hit over it, that kind of thing. So we'll make those kind of adjustments at the end. And then we keep fine tuning it until the client is happy, and then we're done.
Yeah. So you gave me prices for those different tiers, and originally I thought I wanted the light build.
Yeah.
And it was funny. You actually mentioned that, I think you said something like 80% of what you do is gold build.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised, but the more I thought about it, I was kind of like, I'm probably going to play this course a lot on GSPro. So I would probably want it to be the best experience it can if I'm going to be playing this, more often than a lot of others. I only have so much time. I can only play so many courses. So
exactly.
So anyways, I went with the gold build, but do you want to share like any rough price ranges for those tiers?
Sure, I can share my current price range, and I have to say it's been going up for last year or 2. As I understand how long something takes to build, that's part of the equation. Just understanding, my ability and how long it takes is part of it. But also good for all the GSPro users is that the overall quality of courses are just going up, and that's the maturation of the tools. We're sharing more know-how on how different designers are sharing. Active community in Discord, sharing how to do different things and how to, customize bunkers. So all these new techniques are being shared. So all these new techniques are now being incorporated to all the new courses. So they look fantastic, but it also means that it takes more time, because now you know how to do this fine tuning that no one was able to do before, as we figure things out and share, in the design community. So that's my excuse for prices going up a bit. So I can give you my current price range, and light starts at $1,200. And I would say that the gold build average out about 24, 25. But if it's a very complicated build, if it's a very famous course where every detail really, there are like a million photos available, for me to detail out everything. And things like it could go over 3,000, but so it's a pretty broad range. Like the simplest of courses that you just want to practice on, and you don't mind cut trees everywhere instead of houses and stuff. It starts out in the 12, 13 range, and then it goes up from there. So silver is like right in the middle. I would say it typically runs around 17 to 2,000 or something like that. But these are subject to change, obviously.
Yeah, and so I knew that my course would be a little bit more difficult because it's in a neighborhood, and it's basically lined with houses on every single hole.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk about my course, if there's anything. One thing you already mentioned. So last year they took out and reshaped a bunch of fairway bunkers, and so I don't know. I was looking on Google Maps the other day, and it looks like it still has it with the old bunkers in there. So how do we handle that?
So we have, fortunately, a few bunker changes are something that can easily be accommodated.
Okay.
If it was anything like a fairway change, if it's just a little reshape, it's okay. But any green move, like green being moved, that's earth moving, and like they carve, new surfaces and changes and stuff. So those are not something that's easily accommodated. And in those cases, I would recommend building to the old LiDAR spec. So whatever elevation data you have, let's build it to that. We'll put the green where it used to be and things like that. But for bunkers, It's relatively straightforward to be able to sort of fill up an old bunker if it's removed, kind of carve out the new one, if there's a new one. So as long as we can acquire, but like you said, like Google Maps, you said it hasn't been updated. So we can look at satellite images to see if any of these services have those bunkers. But if all of that fails, I provide you the high resolution satellite image that I'm using. You can zoom in as far as you want, and you can draw the bunker where you want it. Because ultimately, if there's no video referenced, you have to be the guide. So I'll provide you an overlay, and then you can draw the new location and the shape, and it'll be exactly that shape and that location.
Okay, so you don't need any like pictures of that stuff, like. I don't need to go out on the course and
now if you had a picture that gave you a really good idea of the location, because I can see that particular tree next to it, and it's shaped like that, it'll definitely be helpful. But then what I'm doing is that I'm doing the drawing instead of you. That's the only thing that's happening. So
okay.
Yeah. So if you had those pictures, take those pictures and use that to make the drawing, I would say.
Yeah.
It usually comes out best when client does those kind of things, because I'll have my interpretation of, okay, the shape here, but, it may not actually be, where it should be. So.
Yeah. And then another question I had, which you already kind of talked about, was, we're building this, it's February, end of February right now. A lot of the, stuff is grass is dormant and, colors and all that. So it's literally just like, hey, what color do you want the grass to be? I mean,
at some level, but so I'll be working with these satellite images that I talked about, right? It could be Google, or it could be Bing, or it could actually be Apple as well. But these satellite providers, I can get highly detailed images from that are current. Some of them, like I've looked at them all, they're mostly good. At least the definition is good, so I can trace out all the surfaces. I see that it's probably near summer months because it's generally kind of brown. One of the satellite overhead is actually pretty lush and green, so we have some choices. But even if the surface was brown tinted, really the thing that I get out of the satellite overhead is sort of the imperfections and the noise and the different surfaces. So if it was really green picture, the brown area will be brown and the green will be green. But if it was a little bit brown picture, brown area will be browner, and the green area will have a little brown tint to it. So those kind of color hue adjustment is something that I can do in Photoshop. So yes, at some level you can choose, make it as lush as you want, or make it as, kind of dry it out, summer look, or so that's something that you'll need to decide on. I can send you the satellite images that I have, and you can kind of take a look at it and say, oh yeah, this is too green, or this looks just right, or kind of in between these two. And you can make some of those kind of choices.
Okay. So what else is for my course? I mean, do you need to know for me or anything? Where do we go from here?
Like you said, like getting like pictures that are, in season is going to be a little difficult because it's February. I did look at the satellite overhead, which are quite good. I looked at Google Earth. Now, if Google Earth sometimes have just amazing 3D renderings of the buildings and even trees and stuff like that. So that's really good if that happens sometimes. But your course, unfortunately, there's no 3D rendering part. I can see the general terrain and stuff, but the structures aren't 3D and stuff. So any pictures that you have, it won't hurt. It's something I can look at and say, oh, look, that those round trees that I see all over the course, that kind of looks like that from eye level. So, or the deep grass area, it looks like that. I should be using those kind of grass and not these to get the best realistic look. Now we'll have a chance to iterate through this as you check out the builds and say, the grass, can you make it, reeds instead of, these, tall green grasses you have, or, whatever. So we can make those kind of adjustments with the builds as well. But if you have pictures, personal pictures, that's certainly helpful. But I'll be scouring online for any photos that's available for Western Lakes. And if you I have online scorecards already, but if you know that they're just wrong and you have a scorecard that you want me to sort of, spec to, then you should send me that as well. So I know that the yardages come out exactly like the scorecard says. One thing about yardages, though, clubs measure their yardages in a pretty funky way. If they're like log bags, they might, measure along the curved line instead of some aim points. GSPro calculates distance through aim points. So you've got a couple of straight lines in part 4, and part 5 is like 3 straight lines. So yardage will be a little bit different, but it'll help me decide which tee box to put the different tees in if you have a scorecard you want me to use.
And pin positions, I mean, is that
the way I do it, I typically don't take client input, but if you have like the different pin positions you want me to use, I can use. But what I try to do is every green, when I'm placing the pins, you can look at the green in this kind of heat map view, and usually greens yield, like I'll set it to stim 13 first and see if there are like 4 unique-ish spots that are flat. Or that'll still play at stim 13. If there are, then I'll put it in those 4 spots. If it's too slow for stim 13, then I set it to 12 and see if there are 4 unique spots. So that's how I determine them. I do tend to put the Sunday pin in the worst of the 4 spots if I can.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So there might be some bias towards Sunday being a little bit harder, but I try to find 4 unique playable spots. So you don't want to really just do it based on like position. You want to put it in a space where it's kind of flattened out, so it doesn't can't be like a foot from it and then start rolling back. So
right.
That's how I pick spots.
Anything else that we need to go over as far as Western Lakes?
No, but I think email communication will be good. If I have any questions, I'll reach out to you via email. I'll send you the satellite overheads that I talked about right now as well after the call, so you can take a look at the images. You can look at the images that I'm looking at. One question I did have is that to the north of the course, a little bit beyond sort of what you might be able to see while you play, and I think to the southwest corner, there's like basically dirt lots on the image. Like it looks like it's going to turn into housing developments and should be filled in with like neighborhoods and houses and stuff, but it's kind of like dirt field at the moment. You'll see it on the satellite image. So
okay.
we can do a couple of things. We can fill that. We can try to model it as dirt. It's pretty far away, so you'll only see it on flyovers.
Okay.
Or you can green it up, or we can put houses in there. Like the rest of the surroundings. So take a look at that as well.
Okay. Anything else you want to let anyone know about course design in general, or Patreon, GSPro, anything before we wrap up?
Yeah. No, I mean, as you can imagine, it's I enjoy it. I really enjoy building courses, and I wouldn't have punted everything and kind of went headfirst into doing this for a living if I didn't feel like, this is something I really, really want to do. So I have a lot of fun doing it, but I'm only able to do it because I have clients like you, and because I have Patreon, patrons who support me through Patreon. So subscribe. You got some awesome courses on my Patreon. Like I said, 40 some odd exclusive courses, a great part 3 collection, and a monthly chance to win a free course build. So yeah, that's about it.
You sent me, I was trying to decide which level of build I wanted to do, and you sent me a couple to look at as examples. And one of them was, I think, Mira Vista. Is that right?
Yeah. That's a Texas course, right?
Yeah.
And
I played that, and I absolutely love that course. The way it looks so realistic, and I think it's in Fort Worth or Dallas or something. It just, I mean, a lot of times the mountain courses and all that stuff are cool, but I mean, to me, it's just so fantasy because there's nothing. I mean, I don't play courses like that, so I mean, it's like that's fun. But like Mira Vista was just kind of a very beautiful, realistic looking Texas course.
I appreciate that,
and so I mean, there's some good stuff in there, and I love your par 3 courses. That's a benefit to the Patreon as well, because I like to especially play those short par 3s for wedge practice and stuff. So
I love building those fantastic courses with like incredible backdrop and stuff. I mean, I'm building a course called New South Wales for Patreons right now, and that'll be pretty cool backdrop. But 90% of my builds are from clients like you. It's your home course. It's not going to have like the incredible looking mountains in the back or like huge elevation changes. But like you said, I play my first build more than any other course because it used to be my home course because, you know, I like playing it. It's realistic. It looks good, but doesn't have those mountains and, you know, crazy stuff. But, you know, sometimes courses don't look like that. So I try to go for as much of a realism as possible for any courses, anybody's home course, because in their hearts is probably their favorite.
Well, I really appreciate your time doing this call with me, and I'm looking forward to getting the course completed and hopefully sharing it on the YouTube channel so people can follow along. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to the build as well.
All right. Thanks, Sonny. And
take care.
You too.